Look at another text, 1 Corinthians 9 and verse 25. And the common denominator in all these verses is that word agon and agony, agonizomai. Thirdly, not only salvation begins as a struggle, Christ said, not only can prayer be a struggle, but self-control and discipline should be a lifelong struggle in our lives. 1 Corinthians 9 and verse 25, and every man that striveth for the mastery. If you have the New International, it says competes in the games. It's the very same word, agonizomai. Everyone that strives for the mastery is temperate in all things. Now they do it, the athletes in the games, for a corruptible crown, but we an incorruptible. Here, he's saying they are working for something as transient, although this is artificial, as a little leaf on a plant. And that's all they got in the Olympics. They got a little twisted laurel wreath around their head, which after it dried out would crumble like dried flowers do. But he said they discipline and self-control their bodies for nothing but a fragment of a leaf. But he says we should have a lifelong discipline of this body, because we're going to get something that's going to last forever. And how much more it should devote our attention. And I hope that you have entered into a lifelong struggle against your flesh to discipline yourself. The people that I admire most in life are the people that have learned to conquer their own desires, their own flesh. The people that are the mentors that I look to, that I long to talk to, are men and women that have learned to control their bodies and desires. And the more we do that, the more we're like Christ. Because Christ never lost his temper. He never found his temper. He never was given to the flesh, because he learned obedience, the writer of Hebrews said. He had flesh just like us. He was totally human. He wasn't fallen. He was non-pecari. He couldn't sin. But he learned obedience. He learned to put down the desires of his flesh. They never dominated him. It's a lifelong struggle for self-control and discipline. Look at Colossians 1 and verse 29. We are fellow strugglers, first of all, because that's how salvation begins. Secondly, because prayer is a struggle. Thirdly, because we have a lifelong self-control and discipline struggle. But disciple-making is a struggle. I mean, if you want to get in something easy, don't try and take people with you to heaven, because it's not easy. It's a lifelong struggle also. Look at Colossians 1:29. To this end I also labor agonizomai, according to his working, which works in me mightily. What's he talking about? Well, the Apostle Paul was talking about the whole concept of making disciples. In fact, if you look at verse 28, he says, we preach him, we warn every man, we teach every man in all wisdom, that we may present every man perfect in Christ. Paul had this consuming desire that the people he ministered to, he could someday hold up before Christ and say, I gave them everything that they needed in order to please you. Did you know that's an agonizing struggle? I've known a few people that were in the Olympics. One in particular gave up everything to compete in the Olympics. This person gave up normal life, all of their money, basically their health, in order to compete in the Olympics. If you know any of these Olympic athletes, it is an obsession with them. And they will go to no ends. They will go to all limits of their exertion, of their finances, of their resources in order to win a little medal. And this person never even got a medal. They were always like fifth or sixth, never first, second, or third. You know what Paul said? He said, you can take people with you. He says, you and I have the privilege of presenting people to Christ. I mean, I just met someone this week. I really had never talked to them in depth for 15 months. And I remember one time I was very, very busy. I had a lot on my mind. I had a briefcase full of materials, and I happened to sit by them. And they talked to me the whole time. And I had all this work to do. In fact, I had missed some important meetings and I had all this stuff to do, and they kept talking to me. And finally I remember when I shut the briefcase and turned and looked at them, and I talked to them for about an hour and a half. And you know what this person told me this week? It was in that hour and a half that they came to Christ. Aren't you glad for the shut briefcases in life? When you and I invest our lives in people that are going to last forever. Did you know, I didn't know until Friday, that someday I'm going to have the privilege of standing before Christ and presenting this person to him and say, I shut my briefcase when you were working in their heart, and I got to be a tool. Do you know what a burden that lays on me to pray for this person now? Do you have anybody that you're going to hold up and present as your hope and joy and crown of rejoicing when you come before Christ? That's another crown. I don't mean to be giving all these away, but my goodness, they're exciting to be worried about and to be concerned about and to be investing our life in. When you get to the end of the road, what are you going to have to show for it? What have you done for Christ? Paul said, I agonize. It's a miserable struggle for me. He says, I put up with all types of needs. I'm tired. He says, I'm cold. I'm hungry. I suffer persecution, that I can present some people. Now, you might not be called to be an apostle. There aren't any apostles nowadays, so don't worry about it. You aren't. But you know what? We are called to make disciples. And before you pass into glory, I hope there's at least one person that you have discipled for Jesus Christ. And Paul said it's a struggle.